that the biggest reason why I think the stock tip is probably my least favorite out of the first 5 episodes. I think it's probably because, plain and simple, I've never understood the stock market. Never really have. You can ask my senior government economics teacher from high school. We played like a stock market game, and I literally did like transactions as soon as things went down. I didn't understand when I should sell, when I should stay hold. I felt maybe I should have just, not, gone back and forth because the market can fluctuate. Thank you, Vanessa, for reminding me that when I watched this episode. But the stock tip. It was an episode where the theme of it kind of was like relationships being put to the test, as far as like either trying to speed things up or take things to another level or choosing one thing over the other, of something that's kind of getting in the middle involved. It's also one of the very few episodes where George ends up on top, as George was involved in the main storyline of this show, which was him talking Jerry investing stock into Sendrax. The show opens up with Jerry, Elaine, and George at a restaurant, at Monk's, and Elaine was talking about, I think his name was Robert, which, by the way, I made an error back in the stakeout because we're going to be talking about Vanessa from the stakeout in this episode. The friend's name was Pamela, not Debbie. I made a mistake. It was Pamela from the stakeout. But Elaine was talking about how things were going with Robert. And the problem is Robert has cats. Elaine's allergic to cats, and she's getting allergies and whatnot from them. Jerry also is discussing the idea of taking Vanessa, the girl he met thanks to Sagan Bennett, Robbins, Oppenheim and Taft. I almost got it. Vanessa from the stakeout. Now here's the thing, and Larry David made me think of this. A lot of shows that from sitcoms I watched from like the 80s and the 90s, like them, Full House, Family Matters, a couple other ones. There isn't too many like continuity things from like one story to the next. Seinfeld did start having that though, starting in season 4 with a season arc that they had. We'll talk about it when we get to that season. But this was the first kind of like piece of continuity from like a reoccurring character, as Larry David wanted to have like another like relationship story for Jerry for this. But of course, him and Vanessa never broke up in the stakeout, so he brought her back to kind of like keep the continuity going at the time, which was a smooth move by him. But Jerry wanted to take Vanessa on a trip to Vermont. But George was like, no. These weekend getaway. Well, I'm sorry. He wanted to take her on a weekend trip. Like these weekend getaways, they're relationship killers. And Elaine suggests this bed and breakfast place in Vermont to take her to. There was other things they could have done there. We then see, of course, a scene. Well, first, before we get to the scene with Vanessa, the first of two, George then talks Jerry into investing in a stock, Sendrax, that his friend Simons had talked him into. He knows someone named Wilkinson who knows the stock very well, and it was going well. Like I said, I don't understand much about the stock market. I've tried so hard. My dad explained to me. I don't understand stuff about the stock market. But basically, he says Simon's friend Wilkinson will know when to sell the stock and get a good chunk of change in return. So Jerry and George both invest like $2,500 each. And then Kramer, who I mentioned before, is basically, for the most part, these first few episodes has been like sitting in the background watching the action happening, is just laughing, saying that you're making a big mistake. Keeps like just jagging Jerry how the stock kept going down. And George basically kept saying, don't sell, keep going. You never know what's going to happen. but it kept going down and down. And then Jerry's finally like, okay, that's it, George, you gotta talk to Wilkinson. But no one was able to know where Wilkinson was. So George got in touch with Simons, and Simons, I guess, told him that Wilkinson was in the hospital. And apparently, Simons and Wilkinson had a little bit of a fallout. So George tries to go to the hospital himself, even though George has never met Wilkinson personally. But basically, he immediately gets kicked out. And, Jerry was like, that's it, I'm not waiting around for this guy, I'm selling. George, on the other hand, says, I'm keeping it, and I'm going down with the ship. Now, as for the story with Vanessa and Jerry, Jerry mentions the idea about going to Vermont. And even Vanessa was like, I'm not too sure, because this is, these trips are always so much pressure. Jerry goes, true, but, done well, it could speed up, the intimacy. And then Vanessa's like, so you're saying you want to move our relationship into stage 2? And Jerry's like doing these things to describe what stage 2 is, basically. Extra toothbrush spaces, a couple other different things he's mentioning. And Vanessa was on board. Well, unfortunately, it crashed. And she was talking about going fishing, which Jerry was like, okay, cool. Well, it was raining. It was raining the whole time they were in Vermont. They were bored. They were just cranky. They argued over some type of perfume that Vanessa wouldn't tell him about. Jerry was still looking at the stock though, because he was curious even though he had sold. And at that point, Sendrax skyrocketed, and after being down for a while, it was up 6 points. And Vanessa even said also, I told you, the market tends to fluctuate. And she claims that she said you only told me to Vermont just because you didn't have any money or whatnot, and they got an argument. Basically, that was the end of the relationship. Besides Elaine, that was the end of Jerry's first relationship. And actually, 1 second, let me look up something here. Because there's a website. Yes, there is a website that says ranking all of Jerry Seinfeld's girlfriends in the series. Jerry Seinfeld had 66 girlfriends, including Elaine, in the entire series. So, excluding Elaine, that's the first of Jerry's many breakups in the series. And then, of course, since George didn't sell whenever the Sendrax was plummeting, he ended up getting $8,000. So he's sitting there amongst Elaine. Jerry's obviously down because his trip with Vanessa was indeed a relationship killer. Elaine basically gave Robert an ultimatum, even though we never met Robert. We never met any of Jerry and Elaine's or George's, dates. Even Kramer, which Kramer I don't think had any storyline wise, because the first few seasons Kramer never left his apartment, so they were trying to keep that consistent, which was why Kramer did not appear in a key episode in season 2, which we'll get to that in a little bit. I believe it was season 2 or was it season 3? I think 2. I think it's 2. Let me double check that really quick here. It would be on disc 3. Yeah, it's on disc 3. Never mind, it is in season 2. But Elaine basically told Robert it's either me or the cats. And there was actually a scene also where Jerry and Elaine were plotting about maybe, accidentally getting rid of the cats. Which played into effect into another episode where they're trying to kidnap a dog that was keeping Elaine awake all night. Which, again, like I said, Elaine was just so petty. Elaine hated so many things. I don't know how Elaine even had friends, because she hated so many petty little things. But Robert picked the cats over Elaine. So they're both sitting there, and George is sitting there smoking a cigar, which was a little inconsistent, though, because later on, George admitted that smoking made him sick. And especially when he tried to smoke to turn off Susan from him and cancel their wedding at the end of season 7. But he, was raving about that. But he also mentions that there is another stock you can maybe get in on that he mentions. And, well, we never know if Jerry went in on it or not. But, after what happened with Sendrax, maybe he should have stuck around for a little bit. Because, again, the market tends to fluctuate. That's all I understand about stocks and the stock market. But that's it, guys. And with that being said, that's the end of the reviews of the first season, just 5 episodes of Seinfeld. Again, overall, they weren't the best episodes. I'd still say the Stake Out was my favorite. They weren't the most well-known episodes of the series, but still good. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what we get into with season 2. I believe the first episode of season 2 is the ex-girlfriend, where Jerry starts drawing to George's recent ex-girlfriend. And we'll talk about that next time. So guys, as always, what are your thoughts on these episodes? As always, make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Give me your thoughts on them. What other trivia facts do you may know that I may not have been aware of as well? But again, make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Slap a like on the video, subscribe for more content to my channel, and follow me on Twitter at DemandAirboy93. Till then guys, I'm checking out. Have a good rest of your night. I'll see you all later. Peace out, everybody.